From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Colorado teachers say their students are missing something that helps determine their academic success. You might call it grit. If a student who struggles with math studies hard and performs well on their math test, that's grit. If they complete a homework assignment that was really tough to finish, that's also grit.
It is basically a person's level of determination to stick through challenges, to not give up, to push themselves, and to just really put their head down and work through a problem until they get to the other side.
That's reporter Erica Brunlin. She's been writing about grit for the Colorado Sun. Educators told her that since the pandemic, they're seeing a lot less of it in the classroom. And they say it results in lower test scores for K through 12 students. So what are teachers and parents to do? I spoke with Erica about her story. She heard advice from experts about how we can help foster this trait in our kids. And she told me she started looking into the concept of grit after a conversation with a teacher that really stuck with her.
I was talking to a teacher, Megan Leitner, who's a reading interventionist at Calhoun Elementary School near the Springs, for another story earlier this year. And Megan works with small groups of students to really help them hone their literacy skills. In some of her intervention classes, she will have students who just really come across a word they might not be familiar with, and they easily want to give up. They look to her for the answer. They don't quite know how to stick it out and sound that word out. It got me thinking about this whole idea of grit and perseverance, because those are true skills that we all need to succeed in life, and that kids especially need as they're moving from grade to grade. And so I wanted to look at why are students struggling with a sense of determination, and how do we teach them all the skills that they need around perseverance.
Many of the people you spoke with attribute a lot of the loss of grit to the pandemic. You spoke with psychologist Angela Narayan about this. How did she explain the impact the pandemic had on student success?
There are a lot of factors going into why kids are struggling more with grit these days. One thing that Dr. Narayan really seized on is that academic expectations have shifted coming out of the pandemic. Dr. Narayan was saying that during COVID, so many schools went to remote learning, and the emphasis became less on rigorous academic content and more on just engaging kids, making sure children were okay, that they were showing up to school every day, that they were really just getting by. Now that the pandemic is mostly behind us and this kind of new normalcy in schools has resumed, teachers are largely trying to institute much more rigorous expectations and standards in their classroom. And kids are really having a hard time with that. They don't know how to adapt to a higher bar in classrooms when during the pandemic, they were kind of getting points for just showing up and engaging. And so it's really a shift in mindset. And teachers are really trying to figure out, how do you push students to be more ambitious, to reach for concepts that might just be out of their grasp, but that if they stick with it, they can really reach.
And the idea of a productive struggle, that is a term used by educators to describe how students should be able to learn. What does productive struggle look like? Why is it important?
A few teachers throughout my reporting cited this idea of productive struggle. And no one wants to see their child struggle.
Sure.
But there is this shade of struggle known as productive struggle that in the long run teaches kids that if they really stay determined and stick with a problem, they can make it through and find the answer. And Megan Leitner in Calhoun was saying that when it comes to productive struggle, if a student is giving up on figuring out how to read a word they have never encountered before, she will work with them to maybe remind them of skills and vowel sounds they've learned in the past that could help them inform their understanding of this new word. Or she will help them break up a word in a different way. She is simply nudging them, reminding them of skills they've learned before to help them come to the answer of this new word on their own. So productive struggle is really working with students to encourage them through a struggle, but not give them the answer or solve the problem for them. And this can really help them in the long run build up their understanding of their own capabilities and their own perseverance.
And it sounds like instead of feeling, embarrassed about past mistakes, it's actually empowering to be able to learn from those.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the pointers that my sources gave me in terms of helping kids with their grit is by taking some of the pressure off, focusing on this idea of progress over perfection, and showing kids that there can be fun in trying and there can be fun in the attempt.
You wrote about some innovative tactics that educators are using to build resilience in their students. Can you tell us about one of these tactics someone used that really surprised you or impressed you?
Yeah, so I was able to shadow Megan Leitner's class in Callahan, and her students, we were in a grade of fourth graders. She has a few different really interesting techniques. One of the first techniques I saw is she would project words onto a projector, and then in between words, they would take breaks. So there would be a slide that would cue the kids to dance or cue them to be moving around. And Megan really likes to use this sense of motion and action to help her students learn because it helps them stay engaged. Another interesting strategy she used was this concept of hand signals. So she has these hand signals that she teaches kids throughout the school year, where if they come across a word that they just cannot sound out, she will use a hand signal that indicates to them a certain vowel sound. And that way they can start to piece the word together without her having to speak and without her having to step in and give them the answer.
Some of this reporting may feel distressing for parents, and no parent wants to think about their child flailing. Let's talk about what parents can do to help their kids. What are some things we can do if we want to encourage grit in our kids?
It's really important for parents to model a sense of grit at home. One teacher gave me this example of a very daunting task of trying to organize and clean out a basement. And so a parent might show their child that they're approaching that by tackling one corner of the basement at a time. And on their first day, they're not going to clean everything, but they're going to chip away at it. And those little moments of progress are actually very big wins. Another great example of helping kids develop grit revolves around playing rounds of really simple games. So Dr. Narayan was saying that it's helpful for families to sit down with their child and play easy to learn card games. She gave Uno as a helpful example. And if you play fast rounds of these games, kids will have experiences both winning and losing. And so kids can see, well, I lost, but I have another chance to try again.
Reporter Erica Brunlin of the Colorado Sun wrote about grit and how Colorado educators are working to instill more of it in students. We'll include a link to her story in the show notes and at KUNC.org. If you're interested in hearing some more great conversations from In The NoCo, we've compiled our most powerful interviews of 2024. There's a link in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.